Okay, so here's the second half of Unit 3 coming at you. So get out those notes. They say at the top, Biology B Unit 6 notes, so it's your second set of notes. And here we go. So we're switching gears a little bit. I know we were talking about the Earth and how old it is and stuff, and now we're going to talk about kind of what makes us sick, viruses and bacteria. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a virus. Viruses are unique because they're made of one single strand of DNA or RNA. Remember that our DNA is double strands. When we made the licorice model of the DNA, you probably remember that. So it's made of a single strand of DNA or RNA. Now, a virus and bacteria are different because bacteria are just one-celled organisms. Bacteria are actually alive, while viruses are not. Now, we could get sick as the result of a virus or a bacteria. And if we have a virus, we just got to tough it out. If we have a bacteria-related illness, then a lot of times we can get antibiotics for that. Now, any organism or particle that causes a disease is called a pathogen. Any organism that causes an infectious disease. So another example of something that is a pathogen is called a viroid. Now, this one is unique because it only causes diseases in plants. So we cannot get sick from viroids. We get sick from viruses. So they're a similar word, but they're different. Now, the viroids are single-strand RNA without a protein coat. The difference there is that viruses do have a protein coat. Next up, we have these crazy things called prions. A prion is not totally alive, but it's not totally dead either. It's actually really interesting, and it has no genetic material, and our body does not know how to respond to them. So this is like, I don't know if you've ever heard of mad cow disease. It was like kind of a big deal a while ago. Like a long time ago, maybe you weren't born yet, that was caused by a prion. So viruses all have a basic shape and structure that is the same. They have genetic material, and they're also surrounded by something called a capsid. So a capsid kind of is going to look like this. So here we go, and then they kind of have this on the outside of them, kind of. They might be circles, or they might also have many sides. This would be called polyhedral. That's on the test. Polyhedral. Poly means many, hedral means side. Now they do not need oxygen or ATP. So that means that they do not, not like us. We need oxygen, we need ATP. Now there's three basic shapes of viruses. Like I was kind of trying to say, enveloped is the first shape. You know, does that kind of sound like envelope? The next shape is called helical. That's a long coiled shape. And finally is polyhedral. So remember I said poly, I hope you guys remember, poly means many. Helical or hedral means side. So I'd like you to look right here. This is an example of a polyhedral. You definitely need to know that. Another thing, so if you want to draw that, it's not on your notes, but I would take a minute to draw it if I was you. Now, viruses can have either DNA or RNA, but they cannot have both. These are one of my favorite things because they're so crazy. They're called bacteriophage. So this is a virus that attacks bacteria. So now bacteria is not all bad, which we're going to definitely talk about in a little bit here, but some bacteria is bad. So it's kind of like a bad guy that attacks a bad guy. crazy. They also actually look like this. They actually do look like that. You can see here's a real one. They inject the host cell with its DNA like a syringe. Now that's bad news bears, because this bad guy is going to inject another guy with bad DNA. It's just crazy. It's like science fiction or something. Now we can get two types of infections from a virus. So, a virus would be something like when you get an upper respiratory infection, or you have a cold. Those are caused by viruses. So there's two types of these viral infections. One is called a lytic infection. So this is when the cell that has been infected, or cells, eventually burst. And when they do, they have little virus babies coming out of them. That's pretty scary. Another one is called lysogenic. So this is when the DNA combines with a host DNA. So that's also kind of bad, because now the bad DNA is going to be mixed in with your DNA. Bad news bears. Now don't get too stressed out about it. So here's a good way to remember it, because you definitely have to know the differences on the test. For lytic, you can think of pirates taking over a ship, robbing its treasure, capturing its sailors, then burning it down. So it's going to destroy the host cell. That would be here, example A of a man wearing makeup, Johnny Depp. So you just got to remember the two men wearing makeup. So lytic, pirates. For lysogenic, you can think of vampires, because when the vampires bite their victims, when this pasty white guy bites the bratty white girl, then what happens? Oh, then she becomes a vampire as well. So it's like where the bad cells infect the good cells and make them bad too, basically. So we've got a Mr. Parr song. This is a good one. It's going to ruin the song for you forever. So, all right. So a lot of times we think we get colds because it's cold outside. However, that is actually not really true. The reason that we tend to get colds when it's outside, when it's cold outside, is because we're inside more. So when we're indoors more often, we have a better chance of getting sick, because think about all the surfaces we're touching. We're touching door handles, we're touching remote controls, we're touching whatever. So whatever we're touching has germs on it, and that's how we're getting sick. Now, this is important to know. I just talked about viruses, and it's important to know that your skin is the first line of defense. Your skin is the first defense. So when we encounter something that is a virus or a pathogen, our skin is going to block it from getting into our bodies. If we wash our hands often, that is a good way of keeping from getting sick. Because when you wash your hands, you're using soap and warm water that is getting the germs off of it. If you're not washing your hands very often, and maybe you haven't washed your hands in a few hours, and you go into the bag of hot Cheetos and you eat those, and then you lick your fingers, you know what you've done is that if there's viruses, that you are eating those viruses. Now you have let those viruses into your body through your mouth. So your mouth, your eyes are an opening. A mucous membrane or a body opening would be your eyes, your mouth, your nose. Those are ways that viruses can get in. That's why when you get pink eye, it's because you had a little bit of poop on your hands or a little bit of toxin. You rub your eye, and that's how it gets into your eye, because you did not wash your hands. Now, the next line of defense, if something bad gets in, obviously you don't get sick automatically. So what happens is that your body has receptors, and they're like, whoa, we recognize this. So then it starts to activate an immune response. Now, the common cold, we know there is no cure for the common cold. About 200 viruses are responsible for it. So that's why we tend to get a cold at least once a year, because we're encountering a different strand of the virus than we had the previous year or even the previous month. There was a big flu epidemic recently, so this word you need to know here, epidemic. An epidemic is like a really fast outbreak of a virus, and usually when we're talking about it in the modern world, we're talking about the flu. So HIV, you've probably heard of this before. One of the things that makes HIV so gnarly is that it has RNA in it. So remember RNA, so remember the DNA is tigers, RNA is unicorns. So HIV has RNA. Remember, that's the next step before proteins, DNA to RNA to proteins. So this RNA is going to make DNA. So instead of your own DNA, it's going to make bad DNA that's going to be in your cells. And one of the things about HIV that's unique is that it can stay dormant. This word dormant, does that make you think of the Spanish word dormir for sleeping, right? So it sleeps for years in your body, and then all of a sudden it wakes up and it starts attacking your white blood cells, and your white blood cells are what you need for immunity, and that's going to eventually cause AIDS. And people with AIDS often will die from something like a cold or a little infection that normally someone wouldn't die from, but it's because they do not have the immune response anymore. So vaccines, don't be disturbed by this picture, please. It's photoshopped, obviously. So vaccines, you've probably all had vaccines. Not too long ago, everybody had to get the Tdap vaccine, where you had to go to the doctor or CVS and get a shot. And what a vaccine is it's a little bit of the virus, kind of a weak, dead version of the virus, or mostly dead, and they inject it into you so that your body can make its immune response, so that if it sees it in the future, it's going to be able to recognize it and kill it before you get it. So many of you probably did not have the chicken pox, which is crazy, because if you would have asked my class in the 90s, every single solitary one of us had chicken pox, because you guys had a vaccine and we did not. So that's actually a newer vaccine, but it's a way that we do not have, we do not get as many illnesses, things like polio, measles. Nobody gets that anymore, and it's because we've been vaccinated. Now, let's talk about toxins. So a toxin is something that is poisonous, released by an organism. Bacteria can produce toxins, and those toxins are going to travel through your bloodstream, and that's bad news bears, because if something's traveling through your bloodstream, it means that it is able to get through your whole body. It's not isolated in just one area. Now, often when we go to the doctor, we say, hey, can I have some antibiotics? Man, I feel so sick. I just really want to get better. And antibiotics are okay, but they can really only prescribe them to you if you have something bacterial. So if you have a fever or a cold, in general, that is a virus. It is not a bacteria, and even if you took antibiotics, it would not work. So that's why they don't always want to prescribe you antibiotics. Now, this is one of my favorite topics, and I like to title it, What the Yuck? And that's because antibiotics, they can be overused to the point where our bodies will not, where bacteria is being resistant to the antibiotics, where they don't even respond to it anymore, just like it ignores it. So check out this picture. Now, this is partly why we are antibiotic resistant. So here's some antibiotics, starts there, and a farmer, he's going to give his piggies these antibiotics, and he gives the pigs the antibiotics because they are in a really, really small space, all closed in. They do not have very much space to move around. So, of course, if they're like basically living on top of each other, they're going to get sick off of each other. So they give these pigs antibiotics in their pig slops so that they do not get sick as much, so they don't die, because they really want to get them as fat as possible so that we can have delicious bacon and pork chops and what else comes? Sausage. So we have a lot of yummy, delicious food that comes from that piggy. But here's the yucky part, is that when we eat the food, no matter how much we cook it, it still is going to have some of those antibiotics. And now they are in us. Dun, dun, dun. We're going to talk about this more in class. So now, go ahead and you're going to switch to your notes to the ones that say Unit 6 on the top, and there it's just the last page. It's just a short one. It says blank are mammals. So we were talking about bacteria and pathogens. Now we're going to talk about kind of about evolution, and primate evolution specifically, which is us. So let's talk about that. Look at him. Isn't he cute? So primates are mammals with flexible hands, feet, forward-looking eyes, and large brains. Is that us? Yes, it is. That is us. We are in the primate group. Now, lemurs, monkeys, apes, and yes, humans, we all have similar physical traits. So you may say, hey, I'm not a monkey, but see, his eyes are forward facing. Not like, for example, a horse. A horse's eyes are not forward facing. Even a dog's eyes are more side facing. Also, you can see his grip here. So he has opposable thumbs. Flexible hands that allows him to grab onto tree branches. Another thing that he has is he has a pretty big brain in relation to his size. That's us too. So one of the subgroups of primates, it's one of the oldest, is called prosimians. That's an active at night animal, an animal that is active at night. Now, next up is anthropoids. That's their next blank, anthropoids. That's going to be monkeys, hominoids, and then we break it down to great apes. Finally is hominids. Now that's what we are. We are hominids. We walk upright. We have long legs and opposable thumbs. Opposable means that it can work independently from the rest of our hand. We also have large brains, thank you very much. So why do you think that it is important for humans to be bipedal? Bipedal means walking on two legs. So you can see here there's a picture of a monkey's playing with an iPad. It's pretty crazy, right? So there's no way we could have evolved to where we are now if we did not walk on two legs. The reason is, can you imagine if we had to use our hands to walk like dogs or something? Would we be able to carry food and carry supplies? I mean, think back like caveman style. Would we be able to hunt? Would we be able to make a fire? Probably not. We've got to have these two legs. We've got to have our arms free for doing work in order to evolve. So, you don't have to look at this. Now, I'm going to give you your secret password for this video. It's going to be, what group do humans belong to? What group do humans belong to? Now, I will see you guys very soon. Email me if you have any questions, and don't forget to email the password. That's the only way you'll get full credit. All right, see you later. Bye.